everyone, welcome back to another episode of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. My name is Mars, and today we're going to be talking about something that I didn't really expect to cover, and I hope it's not too dour sounding. I hope it sounds more constructive than it feels at times, but today's topic is why I'm not really playing Final Fantasy Brave Exvius, okay? Now, I've played this game a lot, obviously, and I still log in, and I still do stuff here and there, and I'll still do my streams about it. But in terms of me logging in from the day to day and like, oh, I gotta get my energy down and I gotta keep my orbs down and I gotta do all this, nah. I've kind of let it all go, and it's kind of been a little bit of a breaking point for me as an individual, so I wanted to address it just head on to tell you guys, you know, something for you to just look out for and to consider as you are planning for the future, because this by no means is me saying, oh, I'm done with Final Fantasy Brave Exvius. That's not true. I'm just pumping the brakes on it because I've spent way too much money on it over the years, and that's been especially true lately, and I've just had a really hard look at kind of, I guess, you know, what has led to this point in the game. Why does it feel so crappy for me personally? And you're allowed to feel differently, but for me personally, I'm just not enjoying the game right now. So this video is just aimed to kind of let you know why you're not seeing as much Brave Exvius content. My drive for it has gone through the floor. I'll address that. I'll talk about sort of things that I'm hoping for that can adjust that. And yeah, I mean, streams are still on. I'm still going to make content as much as I can, and yeah, I'll address more of that stuff as we go. So the first and probably the biggest problem for me that I'm having with Final Fantasy Brave Exvius right now is that there are too many units and too little content, okay? There's not a lot going on in the game in terms of content when you compare it to the amount of new units that we've had coming out. And now the breaking point for me realizing this is when they're releasing 5 new 7-star units on a banner with a total of 9 limited time 7-star units. I'm sorry, but I can't not say anything about this anymore. I wanted to compare kind of how things have changed over time so that you understand why this is a complete frustration to me as a player who's collected a lot of units, who's played for a very long time, who's spent money on these units. To just see it go from, you know, where we started to where we are now, it is kind of frustrating. So let's take a look back at 2 years ago, okay? 2 years ago, these units right here are the 9 units that were released over a period of 3 months, okay? So in 3 months, you expected 9 new units, and of these units, 2 of them were limited time. Now, of course, 2 years ago, we had crappy banner rates. I think we were still in the 1% banner, or the 1% rainbow era, with 1/2 of 1% banner rate, which was atrocious at the time, right? You know, a 0.5% chance of getting a banner unit that you're pulling for, terrible. But at the time, there was only 1 banner unit to pull for, and that was pretty good. And split rainbow banners were pretty rare. And across that 3 months, 2 years ago, we got 9 new units, and in that same amount of time, we also got 5 trials. And for sake of specificity, this compares about mid-August of 2017 to mid-November of 2017 as well, okay? So we were not drowning in trials. That was, you know, maybe 1 to 2 a month, which is not great in my opinion. We've definitely had better eras, but like 9 units, super manageable. If you diffuse that across the number of trials that came in that time, there were plenty of opportunities to try out new units, which was fine. And I think during that time we were all asking for more content, and luckily we had Rumble of Malboro to keep us busy, because, you know, that was a tough fight, and it was awesome. It was cool. So even though we didn't have tons and tons of content, we still had kind of enough proportionate to the units that we had. Now, if we fast forward to a year later, if we're talking about mid-August 2018 to mid-November 2018, this is kind of where we were hitting a little bit of a sweet spot with the game, where not only did we have a bunch of content, but we also had a whole bunch of units as well. We had, in those 3 months, we had 21 new units released, okay? And many of these were on split banners as well. We still had single unit banners, we had split unit banners, but across those 3 months, we had 21 31 new units released, so more than double what we had the year before. But the other thing that was more than double from the previous year was the amount of content. We had, still a 2-to-1 ratio of characters to content. We had 11 trials or trial level content come out within that 3-month time frame. So we had stuff like Scorn of Antonella, we had a couple of trial level espers that came out, we had a couple of Chamber of Arms, we had a couple of legitimate trials like with Omega or with Calcabrina. We had a lot of stuff to do. And so across that 3 months to have 11 trials was really awesome. And that was something that helped propel me wanting to acquire units. It had me wanting to play the game. It had me wanting to make videos, because there was always something to do that wasn't just, oh, here's the new unit that came out this week, let me read that to you. That's not my kind of content. What I want to do is I want to play the game. And at that time, we had more than enough to play, and I loved it, and it was so fun. Now here's where we currently sit with this week right now, and this compares from the most recent mid-August 2019 up until mid-November, this week with the DQ11 event. We have 31 units that have been released in the past 3 months, okay? And as far as trials go, we've only had 7. So the proportion of units that have come out has increased substantially, and the number of trials that we've received has gone down. So in terms of playable content to get excited about, there's not much there by comparison to the number of units that are coming out. Now, this to me is a problem because it then shifts the focus of the game away from content and makes it more about units, which is kind of aggravating because we don't have anything to play it against. There's no reason to pull. And this is kind of a tie-in for the video that I made a while back. I will link it in my description for anybody who hasn't seen it yet. But I talked a long time ago about power creep, and I think this was before our first 7-star trials. It may have even been before 7 stars in general, I don't remember. But it was talking about the nature of power creep and how power creep is actually 2 different things that you consider. There is the power creep of units, and then there's the power creep of content, which represents, how difficult content is over time. Now, on the graphic that I'm showing here first, this shows kind of, how power creep has historically worked with our damage dealers, for example. And the same doesn't apply as much with tanks and healers, and, I'm just giving you a quick synopsis of this video. You can watch the whole thing, link in the description if you want to. But for the most part, power creep just goes steadily upwards, okay? And with some power-defining units, you get more incremental increases in power, so you'll get little spikes in power. And luckily in global we haven't seen major power spikes, but what we have seen in global is kind of the progression of content, okay? And that is with this blue line, okay? And content doesn't get more difficult week over week. It only gets more difficult when a more difficult trial is released. And back at this time, I was comparing stuff like Gilgamesh and Beast of the Dark to Aigion to Scorn of Malboro to Venomous Vines, and that was kind of the increment of content challenge increase. And when you compare the two between your power creep of units versus the difficulty of content, you find out that it's the content that determines whether or not you should pull, not necessarily whether a unit is stronger compared to other units. You don't have to beat other damage dealers with new damage dealers. That's not the end game. You need to beat trials with units. And so at the end of this video, I had made a couple of points. So the first point that I had wanted to make in this original video was that the trials determine the strength of the unit and not a calculator. And the problem that we have right now is that when you release 31 units in the space of only 3 months, you don't have adequate number of trials to go ahead and validate that many units that are coming out. You literally just flood people with units that they don't need. And then of course the other point that I made at this time was that one unit being stronger than another doesn't make the older unit weak. And because of how many units that we've had come out in such a short time, power creep hasn't really accelerated that dramatically among our damage dealers. Since CG Lightning's release, we haven't really had any damage dealers kind of break out of kind of that ceiling that she set. Okay, there are some that are slightly better, but not so much better that like you'll notice a huge difference if you were to upgrade. And so we've had months of having damage dealers that are basically all on the same power level with only a few trials to kind of, you know, test whether or not you actually need to upgrade. And if you had any one of the damage dealers within that tier, you didn't need any others because the content didn't require it. Now, one of the things that I made as an additional note to this is that the hardest content accounts for 0.1% of the total content of the game. If you're stuck, enjoy the other 99.9% of the game. And that was a point that I made to kind of help people, you know, feel like, hey, you know what, if you feel like, you know, power creep's out of control with the damage dealers, you want the newest, hottest toy, you're feeling like you're missing out, don't worry about it, there's 99.9% of the other game to play. And that's kind of the part of the game I'm tired of playing. And so for me, that's why when we don't have trials, I get kind of bored, I get kind of frustrated. There's so many units and so little for me to actually do with them. And the bottom line that I had made in this other video was that if the difficulty of the content does not elevate, or there is an insufficient amount of challenging content, then there is no need or much desire to acquire new units. And this is where I've arrived there now. That's where I am. Okay, we just don't have a need for it. There's no need to pull for new units because the content doesn't justify it. You can ask a lot of people who play on the JP side. I think Emperor from that we just got, the series boss battle trial, that is one of the hardest trials that will ever come to the game. Other series boss battles that come after that are easier, you know, by a lot of accounts. There may be a few fights that are harder, but many people that I have talked to agree that the Emperor is the hardest, and stuff that we're going to receive for the next 9 months is generally easier. So what is the point? There is no point. You know, maybe your damage requirement's going to be a little bit higher, but it's really not. We have people on the JP side who are clearing content with units like Bart's, who at this point are many months old. So it just kind of shows that there's no reason to pull. And for me, I feel that very deeply. I've gotten to the point where I don't feel like spending, I don't want to spend, I only plan on spending maybe on some of the stuff that I had pre-planned on, like maybe Madame Adele or CG Warrior of Light, but that's it. Like, for me, it's over until this condition is met, that the difficulty of the content needs to elevate, because there's an insufficient amount of challenging content and there is no need or desire to pull new units. Now, that being said, that's kind of a long tangent from point number one. Point number two is that trials are beaten before they arrive. So even when we do receive trials, one of my biggest frustrations is that it's beaten within minutes of it arriving in global. Like within minutes. As soon as the server goes up, people have beaten it, they got clear videos, they got 10 different clears with a whole bunch of different strats, and this isn't me like digging at people who beat it, it's just the nature of the production cycle, okay? Because, you know, JP often will struggle with trials and then we'll receive it in global, and because we've had 9 months to mentally practice and study for it and prep for it and strategize for it, because we have nothing else to do other than plan for the next trial around the corner, we just blow it out of the park within minutes of launch, and then we're done. And some people, of course, struggle. I don't mean to, like, minimize people who struggle to complete stuff, but there is a large number of the active community who are kind of at the end game content level who just, any trials that do come to us are insubstantial because we can prepare for it so heavily in advance. And if you compare all of the trials that we've received versus all of the global exclusive trials we have, in the 3 years that this game has been around, we have only received 6 global exclusive trials. And yeah, some of them are not even new trials. Like the Torturous Trio is 3 old trials stacked up with each other. Rumble of Malboro, I think, is the best thing that ever came to global. It was the hardest content that ever came out at its time. It was aspirational content. We didn't have any way to prep for it. We didn't have any way to study what JP did and figure it out. Like, we received it, and it was a long time before we started seeing clears and strategies that worked. And I honestly owe the growth of my channel to the Rumble of Malboro, because so many of my early videos were all the different ways that you could beat this trial as time went on, because it was so notoriously difficult. And that was exactly what I loved. I loved going into a super tough fight, and it didn't take 4 or 5 hours like I got on my dev, when that first trial first came out. But Rumble of Malboro was tons of fun because it was something where you could strategize and synergize and figure out a way around super tough mechanics, and if you managed to do it, it was a real accomplishment, and it was something worth sharing. But we really haven't had content like that ever since then. I do think the Chamber of the Vengeful, like Emperor Supreme and the Lantern Trial and Exterminator Extraordinaire Trial, I think those are all really good, but fundamentally they're designed to be repeatable, which means they're not necessarily aspirational content. It's not pegged ahead of where our current meta kind of is. So that's definitely an element of frustration that I experience, is that, we know how to beat trials and we know everything about trials before they even arrive. And that's with, a lot of informed players. I know a lot of people go in blind, and I choose to as well, a lot of times. But the bottom line is that there's nothing, there are no plot twists in the story. We know what to expect close to a year in advance. So that is probably one of the other fundamental reasons why I've just really been struggling to play Brave Exvius, because I don't need to farm more King Mog events. I really, really don't. I really don't need to summon more raid coins. I really, really don't. I don't need more story events. I just don't need that stuff, and when there's no other trials to supplement it or make it more interesting or make it more necessary, like for me, there's no point to it, and which is too bad, because I love the game, and I look forward to when kind of things improve or things get spiced up, because I know they announced a lot of stuff at the live stream this month. But here's kind of number 3 for me, is that if something has not made it to the game, it does not exist to me. I know they've said so many things that, oh yeah, we'll bring Rico 7-star, oh yeah, we'll bring expert missions, oh yeah, we'll bring story mission reset, oh yeah, we'll go ahead and bring this and this and this and this and this, and there are so many things that they've talked about doing, like CG Dwayne, or like like most popular voted collabs. They talked about like Parasite Eve last year, they talked about 4-star trials last year, all of these things that are over a year announced and just haven't come to the game. I'm sorry, but if you announce it in the live stream, I don't believe it's going to exist until it's in the game. That's something that for me is extremely aggravating, because I try not to hang up too much on stuff that we don't have yet and that we've been promised, because it's like, they'll get there, they'll get there when they get there. But that was easier to say 9 months ago, 6 months ago, 3 months ago. But now that it's been a year since a lot of those things were announced, it's not a joke anymore. It's not something that I feel like I can be super patient with. So for me, it's like, yeah, okay, you promised all those things, but I'm not going to get excited until I see it in the game. And that's where I feel like there's a lot of that stuff that kind of just has to be followed up on. Because, for example, Rico Rodriguez was something that I pulled on specifically because they said we're going to get a 7-star. And Rico's old now. He came out before 7-stars were released, okay? And they said, yes, you'll get 7-star Rico Rodriguez. You can pull for him, no problem. And I can get over Explorer Eileen not getting 7-star, okay? Because she came out before 7-stars. They didn't give that same promise, but it's like, come on. Some of us don't care about 30-unit quarters. We don't care that there are 30 units coming out in this month. There's like that one unit that you didn't deliver on, and that gets frustrating. And CG Dwayne, for example, I thought it was kind of a meme that it's going to be, oh, CG Dwayne, ha ha ha, awaken Dwayne, sounds like you have a lisp, it's very funny, but he could have been a cool unit. Why isn't he here? That was announced a year ago, There's a lot of that stuff that it really frustrates me. So instead of getting the stuff that we've asked for, that we've been told we would get, that we could look forward to, it's been over a year, and instead we get quintuple limited time banners with re-released 4 other rainbow banners, like back to back to back with other limited stuff, and these other bogus systems where you can't actually pull the units, you have to key the units, and all these other things that just don't matter, because that's not the game. That's not the game at all. The game of Final Fantasy Brave Exvius is when you go toe-to-toe against, whether it's a trial or an Esper or in some other content, and you get to use those characters that you invested in. Whether that's invested money, invested time, invested game resources, it was your personal investment that you put on the line. But when there's 30 units that are coming at you in a given quarter, you can't give a crap about a single one of them because there's so freaking many of them. And as somebody who hasn't really had any problems paying to get them, it's really frustrating that they just don't get any opportunity to shine. So for me, it's just been a big waste of time, a big waste of money to chase units, acquire CMRs, because none of it actually matters. There's nothing substantial to test it all against. So anyways, with that rant is over. Tiny reason number 4 that I haven't been playing Brave XVS as much because I've been playing Last Claudia. Okay, and if there's any doubt in anybody's mind that, you know, I'm not serious about this, all of my poll money that I had allocated for the holiday season has gone into Last Claudia instead. So now I have every arc in the game, I have most of the units, and I'm enjoying the heck out of this game because there's actually something to work towards. And I'm not going to pretend like it's a perfect game, but I do plan on making more content around it because, you know, if you like Brave XVS like I do, you like it because it's pretty, you like it because it's fun, it's nostalgic, you get invested in characters, and Last Claudia is kind of the same thing for me. And a lot of us on the Discord are really enjoying it. So if that's something you want to take interest in, you can join in the Discord and play some Last Claudia yourself, and we can help you there if that's something you want to get started with. So I plan on making more content for that because I don't want the channel to just kind of go defunct. I don't want it to just, you know, be me, okay, well, I don't want to make anything because Brave XVS isn't, I'm not loving it right now. No, that feeling comes and goes with Brave XVS. This isn't new. I've felt this way before and come back from it, so I'm confident things will improve, and there will always still be new FFBE content to look forward to, but I owed it to you guys to kind of explain where I'm coming from, where my head's at, you know, why you're not seeing as much polls or why you're not seeing as much content. I wanted you guys to know because you've been such amazing support, and I've really appreciated each and every one of you on my journey on this channel. It's meant so much to me, and I look forward to making more content. So thank you guys so much for checking out today's video. Please let me know if you felt any of these similar experiences for yourself. Tell me if you feel the same way down in the comments below, and I'll see everybody in the next video.